Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. Today we're going to do another edition of Terrible Terrain.
Are we delving deep on this one?
We're delving all the way into the Underdark with deep gnomes, grey dwarves, and dark elves.
All right, oh my.
And what their cities and the wildernesses around them would kind of look like.
All right, and who are you?
Oh, I'm Dave, by the way.
The nil fit got to his brain.
I'm Nate.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Ted.
All right, and we are Nerdarchy. Unite. And I believe the way they say it in Germany is Underdark. So, yeah, for our listeners out there in Germany, a little shout out.
We do have them. We actually got a comment the other day in German.
Really?
Yeah, I had no idea what he was talking about.
Just thinking of
it might be
He was responding to 30 in perspective.
Yeah, or it could just be like a spammer selling like penis in hand. But it's in German. Did it say Schlange?
I did not say
which is actually snake.
Right,
but
which race do we want to start off with, perspective-wise?
All right, let's start with the deep gnome. They're
or how do you say the
Svirneblin.
Svirneblin. Yeah.
They're the most different, I think, of the two.
Because they're not evil.
They're the good guys of the Underdark. The underdogs of the Underdark.
They're not evil,
Yeah.
and they also are kind of more like surface elves or forest gnomes in the sense that I feel like they work more with the natural terrain and try and encompass it into their structures, their buildings, and their homes.
So I would see them as like more akin to making a city that's a little bit harder to realize that, hey, that's a city.
Find it or
Yeah.
super.
They also collect in smaller groups as well.
Right.
So
that makes it easier to hide the grouping.
Yes. Yeah. So I think their primary defense, and also their gnomes, which specialize in illusion anyway, is basically things not realizing they're there.
See, I see them actually as doing the strength and number things, and like they're a lot more unified because like the Drow and the Duergar will like be at each other's throats because they're evil, whereas like the deep gnome they're very super communal and cooperative and like work together to make things accomplished.
Well, that's true.
So they might have a large city that's hard to find but super easy to abandon with lots of hidey holes.
Well, sure, anyone can do that in their campaign world. I'm just saying what the monster manual says.
F the monster manual.
They have them in small, tight-knit communities.
And this way, with the
They're like Smurfs of the Underdark.
with them being smaller, even than their dwarf enemies, their tunnels is going to be designed for their size, so they can easily get into and get through. Whereas anyone trying to pursue them is going to be constrained by the size of the tunnels.
Yeah, I see lots of traps, like secret doors, this kind of stuff. Actually, when I imagine a deep gnome city, I think of like an Escher drawing, like where there's like stairs on the ceiling.
Oh, yeah.
So like because they have a thing with earth elementals, like what if they have magic infused that you could like walk on steps that are actually on the ceiling? So like it's very confusing, like it hurts your head to look into it, but because gnomes are resistant to like magical effects, they have advantage on saving throws. Like going to a gnome city is like super disoriented for anybody that's not a gnome. So that would be another defensive thing that they could have.
Okay.
We're also like in that scene in Labyrinth, which was again influenced by Asher.
Right.
So they brought back the poison darts. In previous editions, though.
I mean, I thought using the mere act of using poison was evil. I'm just being facetious.
In previous edition, it wasn't actually that kind of poison.
Yeah.
They would actually take like glass beads and fill them with acid or a knockout drug, and so when they would hit with the dart, the glass would break, and then you'd either get splashed with acid or you'd get this knockout stuff on you. But then other interesting things that have been done with those is taking those same beads, and what if they designed special ones that could take a certain amount of pressure, right? So they just line tunnels with these where they're light enough to walk across them without breaking them, but a Duergar or a Drow, who's going to be slightly heavier, is just enough to trigger the trap.
Landmines. Well, the problem with that is because they're good aligned, they're probably less likely to leave something out that like the wildlife of the Underdark. I mean, I know there's lots of evil things in the Underdark too, but like, are they likely? It's like the idea of like the ranger like leaving is less likely to leave out a bear trap for just anything.
Yeah, but I think it's more like their secret tunnels and their inner defense.
Oh yeah, inner defenses
where things aren't likely to
Right, yeah.
wander in.
Right.
Not-
So, yeah, not the random.
Here's something
happenstance.
that you know, it's less of a question, you know, with our forest video, but in the Underdark, where, you know, sound travels differently and, you know, you have very strange things underground, how do you, what kind of sounds would you see would be typical in a deep gnome city? Is it more prone to being, you know, quiet because they're smaller and stealthy, or, you know, is there some kind of activity?
Well, they're still smiths.
Yeah,
They're still smithing away. Like I think they probably do some, you know,
illusion stuff that sound
dampens
dampens
it.
it, or like warps it to sound more like bats and like other underground like, well, not even water because people might be looking for that, but like, yeah, just like bats and like lizards, like something that modulates the sound so it comes out sounding more like ambient noise.
Of the three races, I see gnomes as being the most, you know, quote unquote magical. Like, I know, you know, dark elves are known to have high powerful, you know, clerics and high powerful mages.
You mean innately?
But innately, yes. So I see them as having magic more enveloped in their city, you know, both with, you know, illusions and with any kind of dampening effects to make them harder to be heard, harder to be seen, and using that to the utmost advantage.
But I'd also see them like cultivating the wilderness around them as well in the Underdark. You know, maybe tending mushroom forests and stuff like that to grow a specific way, lichens and mosses and things that'll be useful to them.
Yeah. Well, and you know, like for them, like I also see them because there's so many hostile things around them. They've got a little bit of like a PTSD, like as far as like role playing. So like they're super shook and skittish because
Kinda
like
twitchy.
there's like always a little paranoid in a certain regard because there's so many bad things around. It's like the crew to always be afraid. You know?
No.
Never
not be afraid.
Never not be afraid. Like, so I think there's a bit of that. Like, and I feel like their tactics, if they're being invaded or something, first off, like they're going to be super, not xenophobic, but just like they're not going to be like super friendly to outsiders. They're going to be like interrogating them, not like waterboarding them, but like asking them a ton of questions, really trying to get a beat on them before they're going to let them into their community. Yeah. And if there's an invading force, they fight a retreating battle the whole way, and just like basically women and children get out,
traps.
yeah, and like they're like range attacking, moving out. People are swinging from murder holes, heading out, you know, like that kind of things, like secret tunnels and that.
Of the races, I mean, they're pretty hardcore. Their speed here is listed as a 20. I mean, they're going to be hard pressed to, you know, be able to outrun anything.
Wow, they're even slower than the other small races.
Yeah. Well, it's not about outrunning them. It's a fighting withdrawal is about attrition and whittling them down.
So that's where I think,
and picking your battleground.
The regular traps and the magic traps, you know, totally come in. You know, I think with you know, deep gnomes or gnomes in general are usually decent with illusions. So I think, you know,
not only that, let's look at who their allies are. They ally themselves with earth elementals.
Yeah, that's very true.
They may be moving at 20, but you got to go through the earth elemental in front of them to take advantage of that. And you know, they're not exactly lightweights.
No, not at all. So I mean, I think, you know, with using magic, with using traps and magic traps, you know, you could have that kind of fighting retreat, and it gets to a point where it's like, all right, well, when we hit X, it's just cut and run. And they go off through their tunnels, and you just
I almost see Deep Gnome more as being very similar to Kobold tunnels, but worked better and deeper. You know, better structure, probably prettier, but
yeah, better style to them. Yeah,
but they could easily just as easily have that trip switch of like, okay, you know, the last guy through, you know, hits the button or pulls the lever, and the tunnel collapses, you know, right at the entry, and off they go.
They're subtle, so they're not going to want to change the landscape a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, but there could be the kill switch of a whole Drow army is in here. This is going to collapse the entire tunnel. Like, you have like multiple switches that have to be pulled, and like
I mean where the Drow, like a Drow city and the waters around the Drow are very arrogant and egotistical. They're going to be like, we're right here. We want you to know we're here.
Yeah,
and they're going to make a lot of physical changes right away. You know, it's not natural anymore.
We've you know, we've mentioned in many videos that, you know, a lot of us and all of us have, you know, read thoroughly through the R.A. Salvatore's Drizzt series, and you know, he goes into a lot of depth in those books about the city of menzoberranzan. And it's a vast city that's been highly worked. Now, major stalactites and stalagmites have been turned into noble houses. You know, you can't look through that and not see this great city. There's just no way around it.
Yeah, so they're complete opposites of the spectrum, right? And then you have the Duergar, where I see them, where they're actually just building literally cities and fortresses underground.
I see them just
And perpetually building, almost for building's sake, in a way.
Yeah,
It's joyless.
They're
Worthless.
doozers.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, except
most
for they don't
are.
have somebody come in and eat the things, but yeah.
Like I see, you've got the gnomes, which work to almost invisibility. You've got the drow who work within the landscape but make it pretty and obvious, like blatantly obvious that they're there.
Well, it's almost like they want to prove their mastery over
Right.
it and bend it to their very will.
Well, super elaborate, like sort of like boss reliefs on it going on, like ornamentation, like demons and just ornate carvings everywhere. Like basically the dark hellish version of what an elvish city could look
But
like.
I see the dwarves carved out and still being squat and square. Like the Underdark has got usually the tunnels, and you got the spikes of stalactites and stalagmites, and everything is smooth. And the dwarves, they're like, nope, we're still square. We're still
Well, no,
like that.
It's like Helm's Deep underground.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into specifics, because we already went through the deep notes
Okay,
instead of
so-
like thumbnail sketching. So if we talk Grey Dwarves, what really summed up what I could see their architecture kind of looking like. There's like few scenes of like the Hellraiser movies where you get to see where they're actually from. The Cenobites or whatever, which sounds like a cereal. No, Cenobites. Yeah, Cenobites. But still sounds like a cereal.
Not to be confused with the Cenobites.
Right. Cenobites. So like the architecture is like just these very dark Gothic looking things with like spikes protruding and like it's geometric. There isn't like pictures and stuff like that, but it's like basically it's cylinders, it's squares, and it's being that very like blocky. Like there might be like geometric patterns carved into things and runes, but there's like not like faces or delicate.
I would think it'd be function over form.
Right.
What the Duergar.
But I mean, sometimes they put ornamentation on things just because it's a thing to do.
But it's just blocking.
But
the
it's
spikes
just
of it.
there. Yeah.
But you could also have it where you can see that it's clearly a work in progress.
Yeah.
It's like, suppose you've got the wall of Helm's Deep, and it goes right up to the mountain. Well, what if instead of it going right up to a mountain, it's right up to the cavern wall, and on you're coming from this side, so on this side they're literally carving it out this way, and when they've got a room or
They're
something
perpetually
here,
expanding. I think that should be part of it. Like the borders of a dwarven city are perpetually the Grey Dwarf city should always be looking like they're always looking to press out because they're joyless. They're just doing, And also too, you would see just like ranks of slaves milling about.
And I think you guys are thinking two-dimensional as well.
And upward too.
I could see walls being built down from the ceiling as well,
Yeah.
where they would man as well, and they're gonna ring their city with multiple walls. You got to remember too the psychology behind the Grey Dwarf
That's
is
true.
an enslaved race that escaped the elephants, and like they're not having that happen again.
Yeah.
Constantly they're under threat from, in their minds, because they're super paranoid. They're under threat from deep gnomes. They're under the threat of the elephants. They're under the threat of the drow, plus all the wilderness creatures. So like their first thing is going to be function and security is what they're going to go after before anything else, in my opinion.
And as I brought up before, audibly, like I would assume that in a dwarven city, they're secure in their fortress. So like I would imagine 24/7, you've got hammers being beaten against metal as they're forging nonstop. And you've got picks against
Part of the
stone.
reason why they're so angry, they never get a good night's sleep. Yeah.
So you've got that constant carving, constant shaping, constant.
You just hear
smoothing.
work being done
Yes.
almost all the. Well, I mean, and there might be some psionic dampening because like a society has to function even if it's evil as fuck. Like they still have to make their world they have to have an economy and this and that. But you know, like, yeah, you just always, and also too, the manual labor, it's not gonna be them doing it, they're gonna be foremen, they're gonna have slaves, like, actually, you know, chipping rocks, whatever, you're gonna see them constantly doing the labory part of it.
Well, you'll have some that are doing, because not all, not
Well,
all
they would
Duergar-
totally enslave other Duergar too, maybe other clans that they capture or
That's,
whatever.
yeah, it's absolutely
Drow, you know,
Or
which are very good stoneworkers
Or
and
gnomes.
or gnomes,
whatever they can get their hands on.
Yeah.
other surface dwelling dwarves.
Well, but also too, like, I don't see separate communities of Duergar. Like one Duergar community might take over another and enslave the other one. Like, they're not.
They
Gonna
have to be on equal footing in order for them to interact. Well, here's one underlying thing I see being pretty much running congruent amongst all three races. None of them let outsiders into their world.
Right.
Like that's like a super rare occurrence.
or not very lightly. Like gnomes, kind of, sort of. The deep dwarves or the gray dwarves as slaves, sure, yeah. And then like drow, yeah, slaves again.
Drow just as easily to kill you as to turn you into a slave.
Yeah.
You know, I think a drow city is more likely to have, you know, outsiders come in, where I think a Duergar city is more likely to have you come to their outpost.
Like xenophobic in a way, like you're not allowed to.
Yeah, like I don't, because like, okay, so you have drow, which are super arrogant, but I feel like the opposite of that is the Duergar, which are super paranoid.
Yeah, I feel like the drow are at least into novelty. Like they want entertainment, and sometimes it's just like, oh yeah,
And
let
their,
this
their
random
confidence
adventure.
is just like, well, you know what? If you do try to
Step out of line.
step out of line,
We're drow.
We're drow. We'll just kill you.
Yeah. So.
You know, and then the Duergar, they're super xenophobic, they're paranoid, probably on the verge of schizophrenic, and they're like, nah, it's not gonna happen, not again. You're not coming in here with your tentacles in your hand, in your mind, and this and that. It's
All
not.
right, so what do we see the drow looking like? What do we see them doing?
Magical as shite. Just like, you know, like you got like fairy fire lanterns everywhere. You know, you got statuary that maybe is like magically animated. You know, I would say almost
Form over function.
yeah, like a H.R. Geiger sort of like, you know, from an Alien sort of thing, but like also with like some bas relief sort of things, like, you know, like demons and like elven maidens and things like that. Spiders.
I would see it, as some might say, the dark pretty.
Yeah.
You've got things that everything is done well, even if it's done in a way that's just like, wow, that's creepy.
Well,
wow,
everything's
that's
made to be
evil.
aesthetically pleasing.
Like if there's a fence, it might look like a spider web. Yeah, like blocking off something.
You could have that, as was well depicted again in the books that we read. There's drow riding, the subterranean lizards. They're prowling where they just stick to the walls, so like they can climb on walls.
I was going to say, I see them as being the most three-dimensional, where the Duergar will be three-dimensional when the function exceeds form and it makes sense in their defenses and their layout. The deep gnomes, I don't really see them at all like that. I see them kind of being like badgers or rats in tunnels.
Yeah.
Right. So we see the gnomes, they exist almost invisibly in the Underdark.
They're Smurfs.
They're Smurfs.
The elusive gray Smurf.
You see the dark dwarves or gray dwarves as dozers from Fraggle Rock.
And also, like an outsider seeing the Duergar city, it's almost a bastion of defense where you just look at that and go, that thing is impenetrable.
It's more fortress than city.
Yes.
And then you get to the dark elves, and like each house or stalactite would be its own set of defenses rather than a unified defense.
And not only that, I think someone looking at it won't see that sheer overwhelming presence of the Duergar city. It's almost a trap in itself because it would probably look almost
It's inviting. Yeah, you could just wander it.
It's like it's wandering into the spider's web.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So anything else? I mean, like that would be different than just, hey, here's the Underdark.
Well, I think the wilderness areas outside of the Drow city and the Duergar city will be vastly different than other places in Underdark. They'll actually be a lot safer. Other than, the Duergar and Drow patrols.
Right.
If you overlook that, they're probably a great place to visit. the resources aren't as contested because, you know, predators and other creatures learn to just stay away.
Right.
Where the Svirneblin deep dwarves, you won't even know. It'll look like any other place in the Underdark.
Right. And they might even like cultivate certain things to be around certain areas, like things that they know they can deal with pretty well that others would have to. It's going to slow
or they
them
have a
down.
rapport with it.
Yeah. Or yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, your earth elementals, any of the like subterranean beasts, you know, like that aren't the Hookar or whatever.
Yeah, or a natural defense. Like they just know to avoid that thing. If there's a cave fisher over there, they don't go over there. Yeah, you know, so they know it's there, so it's not nearly as much of a story. If there's an area that happens to be, you know, where a cave bear lives, they know to stay away from it and not mess with a totem.
Well, not only that, like the deep gnome druid or ranger might even. Well, I was gonna say they might even like set up sort of like a food trail that follows that. It almost creates a patrol for that creature, so they use it like as a natural sentry, type of deal.
So I guess that's how I kind of see that stuff going down.
Yeah.
So if you guys have any suggestions or thoughts that we didn't, hit upon, put it in the comments below. While you're doing that, click like, share, subscribe.
Yep. You can go to Nerdarchy.com.
Or find us on Facebook.
Or you can check out our subreddit, Nerdarchy.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.